Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Well, I am so excited about our guest today, and she and I have similar heart passions. She's got a passion for teenagers. I walked away from listening to this thinking she's a teenager whisperer. So if you are raising a teenager or you minister to teenagers or you're about to have teenagers in your house, you are going to want to listen to what our friend Britney Dent has to say today. So guys, it's interesting. We all have something in common, and that is that Ron has raised 2 teenagers. Josh is on the tail end of raising 2 teenagers, and I am on the beginning. I am starting the season of raising teenagers. So let's have a little fun with this. And my question today is, what is one challenge? Try not to embarrass your children, but what is one challenge you faced as a parent raising a teenager? And what is something that you learned from raising your teenagers?
Starting off, one of the cold, hard truth of raising teenagers is when they did not want me around all of the time to come to the school pep rallies or the school functions and things like that. I had grown up in middle school and elementary. They always wanted me there for all of their stuff. And there was a little bit of separation that started to take place in those teenage years and not wanting dad around as much. And then when they started driving, I think it's God's way of preparing you to let them go, and bring you closer to him when you are riding in a car with a 15-year-old learning to drive. That is for sure. That will bring you close to the Lord. But when they start to get out on their own and have their freedom, you begin that process of letting them go, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, without a doubt. One of the things that we found interesting was when our son was away at a leadership conference, kind of like a youth camp for developing leadership skills. And we went there, we were picking him up, and one of his roommates came up and says, "Oh, you're Michael's dad." And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I'm really proud of him." He says, "Man, he keeps his room so neat, everything's so organized, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "No, you must be thinking of another Michael. That's not our son." And come to find out, when he's away from home, sometimes our kids have listened better than we think they did. They just don't always show it when they're around our house. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those challenges, and yet rewards at the same time that kind of get you. I'm like, "No, you're not referring to my son. I know that's not who you're talking about here." What about you, Marianne?
I'm one of those moms, just to be very honest and vulnerable to our listeners with candor. I'm not a baby mom. And so I like my children more the older they get, just to be real. Yeah. So those of you baby moms out there, I have so much respect for you. God put empathy in you that I treasure, but I love teenagers, and I have a 14-year-old. And you guys, there's challenges as we're 14, and he knows that. He's aware, and I'm aware, but I am loving watching the man he's becoming. I mean, he's facing his freshman year. It's new, it's scary. We're in a new town, and he is just got God confidence all over him. And so I'm just excited about, you start to see these glimpses at 14 of who they could be.
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the things that I'm excited about. And I'm also loving You guys, it's like overnight, and I know you experienced this, but overnight, they're like men. So he's like a man to me. So the conversations we're having are not little kid conversations anymore. They're so much more mature. So I am enjoying it so far. Check in with me at the end of the year and check in with me next year to see where I am. But so far, so good.
It is. It's so neat. And I think you're going to want to really pick up on some of the ways Brittany positions these connections and expectations. I want you to hear her heart as, she makes this comment. I'm trying to remember exactly how she said it, but she said, as a teenager, our kids feel like kids, but they don't show it in their pretense. That's not exactly how she said it, but it was so insightful because they want to be like the big adult, but at the same time, they want to be your child. They want to be your kid and walk both of those worlds. So listen to Brittany as she kind of, walks us gently through the cultural impact on our teenagers, what we can do about it. And at the end, she's going to have an aha moment. I'm not going to give it away. But there's an aha moment over opportunity windows that we have from the time that they're born until the time they leave home. So let's listen to Brittany's insight.
Give your children and grandchildren a way to treasure your handwritten words with our new Generational Legacy Journal. About You, About Me, Generational Legacy Journal will guide you in telling your story while describing your kids or grandkids in ways that capture their hearts and leave an inspiring legacy. The left side pages tell your story, while the right side tells theirs, from the trivial to the powerful. Your child or grandchild will know each insight came from your experiences and observations about their life, their curiosities, their big milestones, and more, drawing them in to learn from your memories, insights, and encouragement. All the while, they will intentionally bump into scripture and your faith values. Visit d6family.com to order your copy of this Generational Legacy Journal today.
Britney Dent is a teacher, life coach, mother, and pastor's wife. Britney grew up in the small town of Selma, North Carolina as a preacher's kid. She earned her degree in sociology and a minor in human development and family studies. She was a public school teacher until just recently, where she started a new endeavor in life, and she began a life coaching business to help teens and parents to make the best choices for their health, academics, and relationships. She also works alongside her husband in his new ministry at Gate City Church of Christ in Greensboro, North Carolina. Brittany, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we start, I got to just stop and just kind of give you a round of applause for the amount of time you spent teaching in our public schools, coming off a pandemic, just craziness. Teachers are our heroes.
Thank you.
You don't get enough credit for what you do, whether it's been during a pandemic or when life was perfect. So thank you for what you're doing, shaping young minds. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Sure. So I taught public school for 10 years, and like you said, it is interesting to say the least. But now I actually have a full-time job as a director of programs for a nonprofit for preteen and teen girls. So I'm still dealing with youth, and I even have some of my old students who are in my programs as well. And so I am trying to manage all of that and expand our nonprofit and help as many kids as I can, but not at the school.
And that's great, because you basically just said what teachers do that they don't get credit for, where the teaching goes beyond the classroom. Mm-hmm. It's not just limited to the hours that you're there. Mm-hmm. It really is a lifelong thing, and I love that you're still instilling those principles in your former students.
Yes.
Well, today we're talking about a topic that a lot of teachers can relate to, and parents can as well, and that's how to parent teens without losing your mind. I just heard a lot of amens out there from our listeners. Your latest book is called Parenting Redefined, Finding the Confidence to Parent Your Teen. The first line of your book caught me right away when I read it. It said, "This book is for you if you are a parent struggling with raising your teenager." What prompted you to write this book?
So I have been told for several years that I should write a book, and several books. So this is, one of many that will come. But I also have an aunt who is a life coach and a business coach, and she published a book, and it was a bestseller, and it helped a lot of people. And I was somewhat alongside her for the process as an editor, honestly. And so I was like, I think I could do this, but I never took the time to do it. And I was doing a lot of trainings and workshops, in-person events and speaking engagements, and those were mostly local before the pandemic. And so I felt like a way to get the information that I had to more people was to have a book. And I've actually had people, in other countries purchase my book. And so just helping families in a larger scale besides just in North Carolina where I live. And the pandemic just gave me time to get it out and to get it done. I was able to publish it last June. So, school got out in March, so to speak. And then in June, I published my book.
Well, I want to zero in on the tagline of your book that says, "Finding the confidence to parent your teen." Why are parents lacking confidence today?
A lot of reasons. Of course, we could say it starts when they are children. But I think as parents, one of the main things that cause this lack of confidence is they feel like they don't have the example from their childhood of what they want to be for their children currently.
Yeah.
And not that they had like bad parents or this horrible home environment for all parents, but maybe they want something different for their own children and they don't know how to do that. They haven't seen the example per se of what they want, and so they don't feel confident to be the parent they want to be or be the parent they think their child needs. And so then you also have these negative external factors from other people, from media, and then peer pressure is major for teenagers especially. And so a lot of parents feel they can't compete. They feel like, okay, I don't know what to do. God has given me this child with no real manual. I know to not spare the rod and not to provoke my child, but what else do I do with this whole human? And so I think that lack of confidence comes from just like no examples of what they want and then no manual to know what to do with this person that they've been given.
Yeah, that's really good. In your breakout here at the D6 conference, you discussed some current trends that are negatively impacting teenagers. Can you talk a little bit about what those trends are?
Sure. And so even in my breakout session, I didn't delve into too many because I had limited time. But one of the things would be challenges. They have all these challenges where they're teaching them to cut themselves or to set themselves on fire or to jump off of buildings, all of these strange challenges. 30-day challenge, do this and do that. And all those things are negatively impacting teens today. And then also the trends in movies and music and media, I think are appalling. I actually enjoy music of all genres, country, rap, gospel, etc. And all of those, even that I just mentioned, have gotten a little more vulgar over the years. And so I think that is a negative trend. That's what's cool, is to talk inappropriately and put it in your songs or your movies and TV shows, all of that. And then I'd say one other trend that is negatively affecting teens would be social media. I know it has some benefits, even for myself and my business and connecting with family, but there are a lot of social media trends and bullying that takes place or inappropriate behavior on social media that has a huge impact on teenagers.
Yeah, and your work that you're doing now, your work as a teacher, did you feel like teens were being more influenced by social media, or was it like peer pressure from other kids? Where did you really see that impact coming from the most?
Well, those two actually align. And so the peer pressure is given through social media. And so you get these messages, or even now they're sharing Google Docs with different things for you to do. They have Snapchat, so they're sending out these challenges and videos that seemingly disappear. And then kids are doing all these things. And so the peer pressure comes with the social media. They're not separate. It just kind of exacerbates it.
That's kind of a little bit scary thing there. And I love that I'm able to tap into your experiences, like as a teacher, as a coach, in ministry and things like that. Does it seem like teenagers understand the severity, whether it's the students you've had or the people you've worked with your nonprofit? Do they understand the severity of these choices that they're making, or is it kind of like one of those, the YOLO thing where I'm just going to go ahead and do it and I don't think about the consequences?
They feel absolutely invincible. unfortunately, and not every kid. Of course, all kids are different, but as a whole, with the culture and the generation, they do not see the severity of it. Even I had an issue years ago with some students who were sexting, sending sexual pictures and pictures of their bodies to other students, and they still couldn't understand. Like, if I send this through Snapchat, it goes away after 24 hours. Or if I post this on Facebook and then I delete my page, like, it goes away, and it doesn't. They're not comprehending. They're just not mature enough to understand all of these technological things and then all of the psychological repercussions of the decisions they're making. They're just not mature enough yet to do that, and so they don't understand how severe it is. And then, of course, if they don't see it happen to them or to their closest friend, then they don't really believe that it can happen until it does. And so, unfortunately, they don't see the severity of a lot of their decisions.
I don't feel like I'm that old, and yet when you talk about these things, it makes me feel really old, because I'm like, I didn't have this stuff. I didn't have an iPhone when I was in high school, and I didn't have any apps, and yet they're dealing with all of this mess, this cultural noise that's speaking into their lives. In your book, you discuss several key strategies to understand and parent your teen better. Can you unpack those for us a little bit?
Sure, and I do want to say I just got an iPhone like last year, and that's the peer pressure from adults. I was forced to get one because with the pandemic, every restaurant, every school, you're like scanning your temperature and scanning QR codes, and my old phone didn't do any of that. So anyhow, that's a whole nother conversation, is the iPhone's effects on the whole family. But in my book, the 4 strategies I talk about are gaining clarity, being proactive, creating positivity, and developing a plan. And I believe those 4 strategies can help you be successful in anything. But I think especially as you are parenting, and especially parenting teenagers, those 4 things are key. And so when I talk about gaining clarity, it is multifaceted. You want to get clear about who you are as a parent. You want to be clear about what you value as a family, because all families have different beliefs, different values. And so you can get, to feel in some type of way if you're comparing yourself to other families. And then getting clear about your teenager. All these teenagers I've dealt with have different personalities, different talents, different abilities. And so you have to be clear about, who your child is, who you are, what your family values, so that you can go from there. And then as far as being proactive, there are things that every teenager will deal with, the peer pressure, the hormones, the bullying, all these temptations. And so a lot of times as parents, you try to just put it under the rug, don't talk about it, don't think about it until something happens. But it's best to be proactive, because these are the temptations they'll face. And so if you can give them the tools and your family values ahead of time, you can prevent a lot of stress and a lot of negative situations and experiences for your teenagers. And then as far as creating positivity, I intentionally say create positivity, because it's really hard to do. There's a lot of negativity in our world. I was even sharing in the breakout session yesterday that I was teaching at a school, and I heard a teacher tell her class that they were a bunch of idiots. And so you think about sending your child to school for like 6 to 8 hours per day, and they're getting this negativity from even a teacher, and then from their classmates who say, oh, you're not dressed right, or your hair is not right, or you don't speak this way. Excuse me. So you have all of those factors as well. And so you have to create positivity intentionally in your home. And in my book, I talk about a lot of ways to do this, but just the images that your children are seeing. I talked about how I redecorated my children's bathrooms and hallways with scriptures and positive pictures and those things. And even creating family traditions is one of my favorite things to talk about. And not just on holidays, but even small traditions. And a lot of times people think teenagers aren't into that stuff because they're older and seemingly more mature, which is not always the case. But even with one of my first coaching clients, I asked her, what is something you want their parents to know? And she said that I'm still a kid. Like, I pretend I want to be a grown-up, but I'm still a kid. Like, they're big kids. And so creating positivity has to be intentional, and it can seem silly and cheesy, but it works. And then the last one, developing a plan. My dad always told me, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I didn't want to hear it, but that cliche is true. And so even with parenting, you have to know, what your plan is for your child. And of course, it won't go completely how you want it to. You have to leave, room for the Holy Spirit and for God to deal with your family, but just having a plan of what you'll do in different situations as you parent.
Yeah, that's really good. And you mentioned that thing of I'm still just a kid. I think sometimes we look at teenagers and assume the narcissism is there, and we think that they just don't care about anything. And yet we forget they are kids and they do have needs, and there's things that they're needing. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you've noticed that something that teens are desperately needing that might kind of fly under the radar a bit that we haven't noticed and picked up on.
There's a lot of things. And like I said, a lot of times we feel like some of the things we want to give them or we would give them, well, oh, they're too old for that. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I do talk about a lot is the active listening. A lot of times parents think that they're listening to their child. They think they have this great relationship. They think that they're communicating well, and they're not giving their kid what they need in regards to listening to them. And so even the new research that is out about cell phones, and then now parents working from home on Zoom. And so it's kind of like, okay, I'm on the computer, I'm on the phone, leave me alone. Or you're looking down at your phone and like, yeah, oh, that's great. That's what the coach said. Oh, that's what the teacher said. Yeah, that's great. And you're not actively listening. And so teens need that because they just want to be heard. A lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, they're doing this for attention. And they are. They want attention and they crave that attention. And so if they don't get it from their families or their ministers, they'll get it from someone else. And it may not be good attention. So I think that actively listening is one of the biggest things, because if you do that, then they're going to tell you all the other things that they're struggling with, all the other issues that they had. And so you'll be able to kind of go from there once you've listened to what their needs are and allowed them that time and space to share with you. And I also include that with not just when they are talking to you, but listening when they're not. So for me, I have 3 children, and when my 2 daughters are talking, I'm always eavesdropping. I'm always being nosy. Even if I don't respond, I'm listening to, those other conversations as well. So listening actively, and I have a whole lot of information and handouts about how to do that.
As we kind of wrap up, what's a word of encouragement that you can offer to parents who are in the depths of parenting and they just feel so discouraged and they just feel so out of sorts and they just don't know what to do or where to turn right now?
I would say it's just a phase. And then a spiritual encouragement would be, this too shall pass. Like, it really will. This is just a phase, and it will get better. I know that sounds cliche, but I've seen that happen in my own life, with my clients, with my students, and even with my own children. They're different ages, so they're going through different phases, and it won't always be like this. Well, that's Darius Rucker, but it won't always be like this. Things will get better, and if you're taking these steps to be proactive and to try to have a better family, if you have faith, which is going to trump all of that and, mold your decisions, then it will get better. And so I think my encouragement would be to seek help, but to know that it's going to get better, that there is hope. And then I talk about a lot of times creating your village. I still believe it takes a village to raise a child, especially a teenager. You need a huge village, whether that's coaches or social workers or youth pastors, whomever. And if you don't have those people, then find those people or create that so that you have whatever you need before your child is older. And I was talking yesterday a little bit about something called the 260 movement that I'm starting. And so from the time your child is 0 and born until they're 18, you have 260 Saturdays with them. And so most people work outside the home, both parents, or their kids are going to school, even if the parents are working from home. And so Saturday is really your day to make the most impact and to teach a lot of things. And you only have 260 Saturdays until they're 18.
Wow.
And of course, you can still try to teach them and tell them what to do after 18. Definitely if you're paying for college, so you may have until 24 or 22. But you don't have a lot of time. And even for, youth pastors or lead pastors, you have 260 Sundays with this child to give them what it is that God would have you to teach them. And so my encouragement is to make every moment count, like to put the phone down, put the work away, definitely on Saturdays or Sundays, give them that village, find, friends, family, church family, all of that to help you, because before you know it, they'll be 18 or 22 and you won't have as much impact. You won't be able to tell them as much what to do.
That is a sobering reminder. I didn't think the number would be that small, and that's a number I'm not going to forget right now. Britney, I thank you for being here. It's very clear that you are very in touch with the culture and what's going on, and I think maybe you have a new book that's going to come out of this, because I can see where your next book needs to be. And also, just thinking about this, if you're out there and you're a pastor, you're a parent, and you're thinking, how do I understand the teen culture? Go ask a teacher. I was thinking of that as I was sitting here talking to Brittany, and my wife is a public school teacher as well. But they have their finger on what's going on in the culture. They see the good, they see the bad. Go talk to a teacher and then give them a hug and maybe a gift card as well, because they need it. Because we often forget that the teachers in our public schools and our Christian schools, they're doing ministry. It's not the way we always think it is, but they are doing ministry in ways that we wouldn't even think about. So go talk to a teacher. And Brittany, I thank you for your time teaching in our public schools. Thank you for what you're doing now and encouraging teens. Thank you for this encouraging message that you've given us that kind of allows us a glimpse into what's going on with teens and how we can parent a little bit better and kind of understand where they're at. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
There are still places around the world where the name of Jesus has never been heard. That's why Operation Christmas Child is sending the gospel through simple shoebox gifts to the ends of the earth. The Greatest Journey follow-up discipleship program is teaching millions of children to put their faith in Christ and how to share that faith with others. Even in the hardest to reach places of the world, churches are being planted and communities are being transformed. Your shoebox gifts full of school supplies, toys, and hygiene items will open doors for children around the world to encounter the love of Christ for the very first time, as unreached people groups are reached with the good news of Jesus Christ. National Collection Week is November 15th through the 22nd. To learn more about this global evangelism and discipleship movement, or to build a shoebox online, visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC.
I love how she just approached the very large elephant in the room. How we as parents, although we're supposed to have all the answers and supposed to be in charge, how we do in many cases lack confidence. And I think being even transparent and honest with our kids in that, sometimes, reminding them of, I really don't have all the answers. I'm just as she said, a big kid myself, sometimes trying to figure this out. But I love the way that she put those strategies into place, and just how really one of the things of being proactive, that is the one of those four that just stuck out at me, having those conversations about peer pressure or bullying or whatever it may be on the front end. As Ron, you often refer to, we are to prepare our kids like battleships to go out and defend, and not just our faith, but just the things that we are going to come up against in life, and how being proactive and giving them tools so they're not completely caught off guard. Oh, my parents prepared me for this. I was expecting this at some point to possibly come up. And I think that's a very powerful tool that so often we can fall into being more reactive than proactive.
There was a couple of things that she reminded us of, and she did, I want to make sure we didn't miss. And that was just what Josh was saying, those intentional moments around whether it's listening to the music, watching TV, the way culture is going to bombard our kids. And just what Josh challenged us with a moment ago, how are we preparing our kids? Because when they get older, we're either going to, look back and go, man, I wished we'd have prepared them better, or we're going to look back and go, man, they really did get it. They got it, on that area. And she's talking about having those conversations after hearing those songs, after, your kids have been exposed to a show that you didn't think they should have watched. But she went a little further. She says she's intentional about the art that she puts in and around her home, the sayings, whether it's in the bathrooms or the common spaces. I still remember things my parents had in our home growing up. Some of it was Christian. Some of it wasn't anti-Christian, but some of it was just general art. But those images, we're visual learners. It stands out to me in my memory what my parents had. And that's one of those subtle ways of putting that doorpost in front of your kids. What do you do to be intentional with those conversations, Marianne?
I'm going to tell you, I am so challenged, and my next steps after listening to this are two things. Number one, I'm going to schedule listening. She really honed in on the intentionality of listening. And I have an opportunity to lean into their heart. We can't parent their heart if we're not listening to their heart. And we're going to do a podcast later on about the difference between parenting the heart versus behavior. But she kind of starts to tap into that a little bit. And the way we parent their heart is by listening intentionally. So I wrote down, I'm inspired to schedule listening. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to be very, and y'all are laughing because you know my personality.
Yes.
Okay. Second, the thing I walked away with is she talked about at the very end about creating a village for your teenager, because there are seasons where, and I'm in ministry with teenagers. And so moms invite me into the conversation in a lot of different ways, because there's times your teenager can't hear you as a parent, but someone in the village is saying the same thing, but they can hear them. It's a thing. Because guys, when they're teenagers, they think we don't know what we're doing or talking about as parents. But the village will say the same thing, but they can hear them. And I love that she said that. I will never forget. My husband met a family. They approached him. He was a student pastor probably 20 years ago. And they came to him one-on-one and said, listen, my son's going into 7th grade. Would you pour your guts into my son? Would you invest in him? We want to give you coffee money, Sonic money. We want to give you whatever you need to be intentional with my son. And my husband invested in this kid from 7th through 12th grade, and they were partners. Yeah. And I love that she said that. We're praying for that for my kids. I'm thankful for the men and women that God's placed around our family. But that's another action step, is that we want to invite the village in to speak truth into our kids.
Yeah. So challenge yourself if you're listening. Who do your kids listen to that you also respect speaking into their world? And go have that conversation. Go be intentional. Go invite them in to be mentors and pave that way. And don't be jealous of that relationship that builds there, by the way. That's something parents often have problems with. Well, they're having more influence than I do. If it's godly influence, so be it. It's a short season. Let it be consistent with yours. Well, as we wrap up, we're going to look for Dale Hudson, a Kidmin iconic leader. I mean, this guy has been dedicated to kids ministry and has been in some of the largest churches around the United States, 2 or 3, that would just wow you at what he has done. And now he's in that phase, like our friend Jim Weidman. He's consulting, he's helping, he's equipping, and making it easier for all the others around him. And we'll want to listen to him. And until then, we're going to ask you to follow Britney's advice and be a listener. We're going to ask you to be intentional about stepping into those cultural moments and correcting what they're hearing. And look for connection moments at every step of the way Deuteronomy 6 challenges us to do.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.